everybody. The show is back. Thanks for being so patient. I know I've been away for a few months. Just had some issues to clear up with the technical back end of the show. The long-running producer and editor of the program, Jeff, who helped me get the show underway, stepped back due to his personal scheduling conflicts. And I appreciate everything Jeff did to help me get it going. And thanks again. But I have a new crew working with me on the show, and we're back up and running, and nothing should be changing too much with the show. I still plan to get guests on and have chats with them about an array of issues regarding the pandemic. And in this episode, I'll be doing something that is a little bit of a change with the show, and I hope to be a ongoing sort of sub-format as time progresses. I have on today Scott Desmichel, who is he was the blog editor at ECV and a longtime member of the organization and a friend. And we plan to have a ongoing back and forth conversation on a whole wide selection of topics as to what's been going on, and we're going to sort of work together with try to make sense of a whole bunch of things that are occurring right now and in the past and going forward and so forth. And this episode, we're kind of all over the place a bit, but I think we're getting our bearings, and this episode is completely unbearable, then please forgive me for my failings, as there have already been many throughout this show, and you're still here, and you don't completely hate me yet. So that's okay. But yeah, I really enjoyed this talk, and we hope to do this every 2 weeks, I think, for the time being. Maybe we'll do more often. We'll catch up once a week and shoot a chat out to you guys, and maybe it'll step back and be less frequent, maybe once a month. We're just going to go with it and see how it progresses and flourishes or completely collapses in a greasy ball of flames. So we'll see how it goes, and I hope you get something out of it and enjoy it. Cheers, guys. All right, so we were going to do this last week. Now we're actually going to get to it. You wanted to go over our failing institutions. So, yeah, let's get going on that.
So, yeah, well, are they failing? And I think to a degree that they are. And some of it has just been exposed by the modern internet age. And some of it doesn't work very well in the new age and can be replaced. But which institutions are those? At the same time, not listening to the experts in a very complicated world, can be deadly. The gain of function research aside, because that's a whole conversation of its own. Fauci had a whole bunch of good calls. He had a couple of bad calls.
Mm-hmm.
And, the CDC made some big mistakes, but they weren't absolutely awful. Some of their stuff was, I think, if not politically motivated, politically restrained. So it could, for example, it took them a long time to say COVID is airborne.
Yeah, who's actually saying that now? Are the WHO and the CDC both saying that?
Well, it took the CDC almost a year to actually admit to that.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was like at the end of 2020 or early 2021 where they acknowledge or say the chances are good that it's airborne, and so maybe filtering the air or wearing masks or keeping it out to open
although
air.
There's not a lot of action on that because none of the mask public health messaging, or what or how they're trying to work with various other smaller institutions, school boards, businesses, whatever. Like you don't see this mass flood of better masks or like new HVAC systems on a mass scale or anything like that. So they might have had some acknowledgement and some modification in their messaging and what their official perspective is, but it doesn't seem like on the level of action that there's not a whole lot.
Yeah, I can't speak to why that hadn't been coordinated. And this is across two administrations, one Democratic, one Republican, and yeah, there's not really a clear goal as far as masks go, as far as testing goes, where you've got civilians and regular people trying to buy tests, and sometimes they can get them, sometimes they can't, and sometimes they can't because the government buys them up. And okay, well, if the government's going to buy them up, then maybe they can distribute them equitably or intelligently, distribute them to people that need them, first, like medical professionals. But and a lot of times they don't get out, or they'll sit, on a shelf somewhere until they lose efficacy themselves, so they're no good. And so COVID has really exposed a bunch of broken institutions, and you can get on the internet and do your own research. You can read, there are good and bad ways to do that, right? And some people can't do it very well. And that, in this day and age, that can be deadly, to have flaws in your sense making, because it seems like it's ever more dependent on the individual. I'm not sure that's a good thing. I mean, that it's impossible for everybody to be an expert on everything, right? At some point, you have to trust someone.
For something at this scale, it just seems insane that there is some sort of there is the advantage, but then there's also the disadvantage, as we could see with all sorts of treatments and vaccine issues. Concerns about masks. Just the whole concept of people on an individual level being able to go and figure out for themselves, like, even though it hasn't been really pushed towards that in its entirety, like it's still not really working out so well. And so it's something on this scale and with that's so dependent on certain degrees of immediacy. Like you can't sort of leave everybody to try to figure everything out with their own means by reading whatever resources are available and coming to their own conclusions. You need some sort of cooperative collective action for everything to work out. How's your headphones working out there?
Headphones are working good. Just want to hook the mic up.
All right. Now that you're sounding like the best 70s rock DJ ever, late night DJ, we can right. So all
right. Let's talk about how the world's broken, or our institutions are broken, or we've maybe they were always broken. We just figured out how broken they are.
Yeah, and so with how quickly this just impacted everything, it just outlined it put a spotlight, I guess, on the failure, or the pitfalls, the failures, the issues with the media, maybe the academy, certainly the bureaucratic scientific institutions.
They screwed up too in tons of ways.
So I guess let's start with the media then, because that I think that's probably the lower hanging fruit of them.
Sure, yeah,
because it's not really like prior to the pandemic there was really that much love and passion and confidence with the press on behalf of the majority of the public. It wasn't like everybody was going, my God, all the press outlets are just doing such a wonderful job. They're such great sources of information, and they're totally not driving people crazy, and really manipulating certain components of certain messages, and yeah. So even for instance, like one of there was one of John Campbell's more recent videos. I think 2 days ago he did one on, because he's really pro vaccine, but he thinks that ivermectin.
He's still on the ivermectin.
Yeah. I think that's reasonable. Like I think people have really jumped on that one bit of falsified data, that one really morally bankrupt study.
There were a couple. The Egypt one, but I think the Argentina one turned out to be. That's the one that Derek was like on Twitter was saying somebody just cut and pasted this data.
Oh, I thought that was the Egyptian one too. That was the Argentinian one.
Well, maybe it was. I'd ask him, but it seemed to hear that the Argentinian had a whole lot of problems with it as well.
Right. It's not ruled out, but it's still not wise to take the Brett and Heather evangelical position at this point. That
blows me away, and that's one thing I've really respected about Dr. Campbell. I disagree with him. I think that in the sense that I think the chances of ivermectin actually really being that much of a help are low. We would have figured that out by now. It wouldn't just be relegated to a few low end studies that the big studies that we've done should show something, and none of them do. And it's not just the anecdotal information, it's the fact that there's like a cult behind it, that people are so committed to it and think that it is the cure. And Brett's not saying it's the cure for it. Well, he did at one point. He was like,
he pretty much went over there at one point where it's like this is the solution.
That if everybody did ivermectin, we'd be done in a month or so. He went that far, which was, and Campbell never went there.
Not even close.
He was like, we should try it. We should study it some more. I think it's got lots of promise, and
which is a mild position. It's just that everything around ivermectin's got. It's also become a culty position to be so ardently opposed to it, where you haven't really thought about it. It's just become a meme to laugh at people and cry horse paste.
Right.
And then you get to pat yourself on the back.
Yeah. So you could get into your echo chamber there, like hydroxychloroquine, where they were like, it definitely doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And, at least early on in the game, we didn't know that for sure at all.
Yeah. April 2020, nobody had a clue.
Yeah.
It just became, that also became a thing and for some good reason, because the Goblin pushed it so much into the forefront so fast.
The Goblin, sort of doomed it to be political by going off half cocked and saying how wonderful it was when nobody knew how wonderful it was. And the smart position, the intellectually humble position is, we don't know. It could. We don't know that it doesn't, but we don't know that it does, and we shouldn't be telling people that this is the wonder drug. Mm-hmm. Because it could end up being harmful. And it turned out it was in some cases. And ivermectin could be the same way. Some of those studies, the dose was so high that you couldn't translate that, pound for pound into a human dose, mm-hmm. or it would be dangerous. It wouldn't be,
You do that on a mass scale of millions, and you're going to get some people getting pretty messed up as a result of that. But anyway, so that's just sort of Campbell's position, and so I seen it floating around a lot.
Yeah, and Campbell's got the humility. He doesn't, say this is absolute for sure. He's like, I think there's a good chance. There's a signal here, I think, and we should study it. But he has always kept himself. That's why, even though I disagree with Campbell, I haven't lost much respect for him because of this ivermectin thing. There have been a couple of times where he's, kind of skirted around that conspiracy rabbit hole, but he hasn't gone in.
I think not. I don't think really that rabbit hole. I think he's just kind of cynical.
He is. He definitely is, and not without reason, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm pretty cynical. But anyway, so he there, and I seen it floating around for a while. There's this BBC piece that came out, I don't know, 3 days ago, and it was an ivermectin slam piece, and they thinly cited some information, and so Campbell dug into what they're citing, and this paper that was opposed to ivermectin, like some of these pro ivermectin papers, was also itself dubious. The lead author was a student,
right,
and the information was really scarce, and it wasn't public. It was still just a preprint,
right.
And a lot of it was, the information was just conjecture. It was more like an
It could be more study needed. Yeah. Give us a real study.
And so so a lot of this episode that he did 3 days ago or whatever was on had to do with the BBC, and this was one of the big international media institutions, just not in Britain. This was one thing that everybody looked up to, and on all sorts of issues, when politics gets involved, the BBC is just wholly unreliable now. And so right there with that particular piece, if you wanted, I can't remember what the piece is called, if anybody wanted to check it out, but you could see John Campbell's episode on the 7th of October, I would think, somewhere around there. But where the BBC just had no journalistic scruples on an important thing, because if ivermectin is something that nobody should be taking, we should be taking that seriously and not having such shady reporting. And if it is a possibility for sort of a side treatment,
right,
in tandem with the inoculations, then that should be taken seriously in the future. And if that does happen to be what's occurring, all these outlets like the BBC and the New York Times that are publishing hyperbolic opinions that are guised as scientific rigor, that not only is going to cause problems, that has caused problems already.
Yeah. Even if they're right, this one time or that one time, they're right most likely about hydroxychloroquine, and there's a good chance they're right about this. But the certainty, the lack of humility,
mm-hmm.
It kind of indicates that they got stuck in their own echo chamber, and it makes you wonder whether these media outlets, whether this is political pressure from above or below, or is someone telling what to say, or are they just telling us what we want to hear?
Yeah, because it seems to follow a political line, but what's creating the incentives for them? What are the incentives to create their initiative to follow these sorts of lines? Like, is it like because you go enough way off on the far left or way off on the tail end of the far right, and you get the people that everything is people in dark rooms twirling their mustaches and something like that. But no, you're not going to have any sort of political thumb on the scale actually getting the BBC or the New York Times to report on certain things. But and with the BBC, you know, it's not even like the business model, because there is no business model. It's
as far as
it's a public news network.
Right. Yeah. Where they don't have to make money. They have to make ratings. There's a ratings KPI component to it. But yeah, they're not that committed to the almighty dollar, yet they're still susceptible to corruption in one way or another. And maybe it's just telling people what they want to hear. Maybe that's, you know, this we do these stories, or we do stories like this with this framing, and we meet our ratings quota. Because I mean, Fox News and NBC have both hooked their wagons to Trump, and one is, you know, the Love Trump network, and the other one's the Trump Hater network, and they're so sorry to see him go, because, you know, he makes some money. I mean, they're
going to be a big contributor in possibly, you know, it looks at this point that it's inevitable that he'll run again. You know, as long as the cheeseburgers don't get him.
Right.
But, you know, if he doesn't die via cheeseburger between now and then, he's pretty much looks like he's going to run.
Wondering.
And like, I would love somebody's dissertation on who's going to defeat him in the Republican primaries.
Wouldn't it be funny if we got to look at some of the dark money, you know, going to support this or that political candidate, and find some strange bedfellows like Disney, Amazon, and Viacom, you know, in the tank for Trump, not because they like him so much, but because he's where the money's at. That's where you get your viewers.
He's where the money at. He's where the money is at, and he's going to give them slightly more of a tax break than the Democrats will.
Yeah.
You know, and as much as Disney and Amazon and Google and Apple they're all public companies with shareholders that they're responsible to. Yeah. As much as they have this nominal farce of being concerned about social issues and
sustainability and
you know, fill in the blank. Yeah, there are these massive companies that are beholden to profits and their shareholders.
Right.
But yeah, so when Trump doesn't inevitably run again, like it's not, he's closer to 80 than he is to 70, and he's 90 pounds overweight. So, you know, his fucking heart could just explode from mayonnaise any day now.
But evil never dies. Good shot. He's gonna, you know, make it to 90. I think
Joe Biden and Donald Trump are gonna live forever just to torture everybody.
Yeah.
But yeah. So as long as he doesn't kick the bucket or get Alzheimer's, he's definitely running again. And yeah, there's one thing or a bunch of things that'll help to make him is that MSNBC and CNN and Fox, of course, and even the papers to a degree, they want that. Like
it's like they're all forced to compete.
Even the New York Times, like they're on a like. I really have no idea, but you know, I'm sure somebody can imagine what their actual print subscriptions are now, in contrast with their app subscriptions.
Right.
But so they're on a, you know, even though it's the New York Times, they're on a click business model. So, you know, if the Orange Goblin makes the fiery comeback, then, you know, they're going to have an interest in that too. And so when he, you know, runs, he makes the jump for that comeback, they're going to have a vested interest in helping it along, and they'll do that, and I'll just sort of work off of it. They'll just play off of each other, and
play off of each other. As in, Donald Trump said this. Okay, well, we're going to get, you know, someone to to make a comeback for that, and just tried to ride the money train on the beef framework of a couple of rappers having a beef, and I don't know which ones have been exposed, but I strongly suspect many of those beefs that are designed beforehand, or just evolve just because, not so much that they like to beef with each other, but the beef brings in the bucks.
Yeah, no, absolutely. There is that, but I would say that's just like maybe a single iteration of sorts. So it'll, like, Trump would form his comeback, his second run, and then MSNBC and Fox and etc. have an incentive to move that along, and then that helps move Trump along, and then they have more to cover.
And the sick irony is he could get elected in 2024 and serve 2 terms and go into 2030. That would be oh my God, this, it could be the decade of Trump.
Wait, is
it could happen.
How do your electoral laws work? I thought it was you could only serve 2 terms.
I think it's all about consecutive terms, and that if you split them up, then those rules are out. It's never been tested, but which means
what happened
to room to do that.
Well, what happened after Grover Cleveland's second term? Did he lose, or did he not run again?
Was Cleveland like the split term where he did 4, let someone else do some?
No. He had a term, then he lost.
Right.
And then he would be the only person that is going to do what Trump is likely to do.
Yeah.
So
did he serve a second term after that? I don't think he did.
No, I just don't know if he didn't, or
if he served his third term.
No, he served 2 terms, just non-consecutive. Right. I just don't know at the end of the second term if he wasn't allowed to run, or decided not to run, or if he ran and he lost.
Okay, yeah.
So
I have no idea.
You're supposed to know that.
Even if he did, I think even if he wasn't allowed to run, I think in this case they would make an exception.
Well, I think if
good chance that the Republicans will have most of Congress, by 2024, and
if the
between them and the judiciary,
if the economy goes south, then the Republicans they're going to have the whole deck of cards.
Right.
Yeah, they're going to have the judiciary for a while.
Right.
I don't think this hyped up pipe dream of adding a whole bunch of more judges is going to happen anytime soon.
No.
So the Republicans will have the judiciary for a long time, and if the way things are going already, but mainly if the economy kind of goes south, then they're going to have all 4 in 2024. Both houses of Congress and the executive and the court.
Yeah. That's the whole shoot match right there, and it's not looking good economically. I mean, China has energy problems, which is insane. They're the biggest producer of coal, and they don't have enough of it. All of a sudden, I think that explains why they were kicking out all these Bitcoin miners that were using up all their extra juice. But Britain is having terrible supply problems, and the U.S. Those ripples have gone through the U.S., and I think the U.S. has managed to weather it better than most, because we're not so dependent on global trade as much of the rest of the world. But it's going to hit the U.S. as well, I think, and there's going to be inflation, if not through dollarization and monetization of debt, just printing dollars out there, just out of screwed up supply chains. because every screw up in one supply chain fans out and affects 10 others. And then they get screwed up and that affects 10 others. And, then you end up with ports with a ton of containers that are empty. And then on the other side of the world, containers cost like $40,000 to rent for a voyage.
And then that just gets worse if you get all sorts more supply shocks along the way from new bouts of infections in important regions where there's shipping or manufacturing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That compounds on top of that already. And all of this, almost 2 years now, this is, I guess, a year and a half still. It's only October. It's all been going on for a year and a half, and only some markets have kind of stabilized. But
and I think
most are still kind of really all over the place.
And maybe another 2 years before those get a chance to even out, if then.
And a lot is getting worse. Like there was some like food shocks for. I don't know in your neck of the woods. Like mostly, I'm going to be speaking off of what's going on around here. But there's usually not a lot of variation between us. It's pretty joined. But like due to just more proximal things, there was, you had in inflation at the supermarket, but that's usually just like temporary. It's just like, hey, these trucks got bottlenecked over there. And then in a month, it kind of starts to smoothen out.
Right. We had that with wood.
Oh, the lumber one was a whole crazy one altogether. Like that just went way up, and nobody really knew when it was going to come back down, and it just sort of shot back down. But what's happening with like the food markets now is just like it's going up, and it's more of a large scale thing, and it looks like something that's going to continue.
Going to stick. Yeah. Yeah. There's a good chance it'll stick.
Oh, that it will stick. Yeah. So I think we're seeing, or
their inputs are getting more expensive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we could be seeing the beginning of, some of these particular consumer markets starting to inflate, and maybe this is just a little blip right now, the last couple of months, or. And this is a year and a half.
I've changed my mind. We've been talking about inflation. I wasn't really so convinced. I was like, there's inflationary forces, but there's also plenty of deflationary forces too. And there's a lot less spending. And but I've kind of changed my mind to a certain degree, and it seems like. We're gonna suffer through it just because we've got these ripples in a pond that they hit the shore, then they come back, and then they just cause dissonance, and nothing. The whole just-in-time inventory system doesn't work so well like that when you can't predict. Mm-hmm. And when those ripples hit each other, from the shore, it's chaos. You can't predict it. And so, they're going to have to like buffer themselves up. And so, shipping won't be as efficient. So the prices for all that shit is going to go up. And, if China invades Taiwan, right, then global shipping is just going to take a big shit.
I was worried about that at the very beginning of the pandemic. And I felt like I'm too worried about these things. And now everybody's worried about that. And I hate being right. Yeah. Like, not that it'll happen, but just that's something I was concerned about a year and a half ago. And
Taiwan?
Taiwan. And now everybody seems to be concerned about that. So
what made you worry about it a year ago or a year and a half ago?
Oh, just that has been a consideration of Beijing for quite a long period of time.
Right. They never took it off the table.
And then there's this that they handled the pandemic well. And you can say whatever you can say what you want, that You know,
that China did.
There was that that China handled. Well, Taiwan handled the pandemic.
They did really well. Yeah.
But China handled it well, even though they knew a lot more early on and decided not to tell people. And
I'm not entirely convinced they did, because it's hard to believe their data.
Oh, there's that too. You can't really believe much of their data too. It's a lot of it is mystery. But regardless, however they did it, they managed to handle things early on really well. And so that leaves a position where everybody else is scrambling. A lot of the world is really vulnerable. And so, the Chinese economy was still doing pretty good, whereas the American and British and French economies were just getting hit by a spear.
By shocks everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. They're just,
and now labor shocks.
And so it just seemed like, this is not a huge turning point, but a shift where the Chinese that were already on an upswing, their upswing got a little bit of an acceleration for whatever duration of time, and everybody else is in a state of vulnerability. It didn't seem unreasonable to think that this is an opportune moment where they can not necessarily invade.
So you were thinking this a year ago, though.
Oh, right.
China, because China, as far as we could tell, they were doing pretty well.
March last year,
right?
Yeah.
Okay, this would be a good chance while everybody's distracted.
Yeah, and not necessarily invade, but start.
Yeah,
putting on pressure.
Buying a bunch of watercraft or passing laws that allow them to press civilian vessels into service.
Mm-hmm.
Which they did. I don't know whether that was before or after COVID, but they're definitely leaving that whole situation on the table, saying that we could if we wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I not sure that the Chinese are in that good of a position, because right now they're getting hit by a water crisis and by an energy crisis, and they got a demographic crisis, looming on the horizon. That it turns out is worse than what everybody thought it was. And the updated estimates are China's population is going to be cut by half by 2050. At first they were saying it was going to be cut by half by 2100, and then they backed it up to 2070, and then to 2050. So evidently they found different ways of measuring Chinese population growth, and somebody's been fudging the numbers because they don't have as much people as they presented themselves as having.
So would they want to fudge the numbers for like investor confidence?
Yeah, I wonder how that works, because either it's a really tight conspiracy where they go like the mob and they keep two radically separate sets of books and they make them both work out with each other. And, they're just great at creating fake figures and deriving fake figures off of those fake figures and still making them look legit when you look at them from every direction, which is pretty hard to do. You can fake one set of figures, but then it's going to screw up another set of figures. Or what I think is just as likely is kind of like the Russia problem, where only good news is allowed to go upstream. You're incentivized to show good numbers, no matter what the real numbers are. And if everybody's faking their numbers, how do you get good data, internal data? Well, maybe you don't. Maybe you think it's good until you've got an Evergrande, blow up in your face. And so on top of your demographic and power and water crisis, you got a financial crisis. And so when China, is throwing all their airplanes over Taiwan and flexing their muscles, I'm not sure they're doing it because they're strong. China, the country is strong, but I think that the CCP is feeling pretty insecure right now.
Yeah, and it's not clear that they're in a good position to actually have any actual sort of military aggression, because I don't think it's hard to say what Xi and the other higher ups at the top of the party are actually thinking, and like how actually fanatical they may or may not be, and how shrewd
how much of their bullshit do they believe,
or how much are they actually just like really hardline shrewd pragmatists,
right?
I don't think anybody really knows. A lot of it is really a mystery at this point, but unless I'm
pretty sure to be at the top circles, you have to have a certain load of realism.
That's my assumption.
Yeah.
But so unless they're extreme fanatics, which I doubt, they would have to see that it's not really clear what the Japanese and the Americans would do if
right
they took any sort of
the two world's biggest navies. Yeah.
So and Taiwan's also kind of like Israel. It's this little country with a good sized population for how small the country is, with just a monstrous military. And so like that's sort of why the forecasts now are like, China could invade Taiwan by 2025. Well, it's like, well, why not now? Oh, well, it's because Taiwan has a massive fucking military, and they could,
okay, that's what they're saying.
Yeah. That's been the headlines a lot in the Financial Times and Reuters is
that China isn't yet to parity with Taiwan as far as
that's what the Taiwanese government is sort of projecting, is that they're predicting by 2025, that's when it could be a possibility, and that's based on that it would take them just a massive invasion force because of just the strength of the Taiwanese military.
Yeah, it seems like there would be absolutely unacceptable casualties from a democratic state. That maybe China can survive, because it's got plenty of extra young men.
Well, that's another question too, because that's where a lot of it leans on, is that how much casualty, because one might think is like, hey, this is a brutal totalitarian country, but then like they're going to have a certain amount of acceptable level of casualties. So it's just really not too clear what they're going to want to take, and then also like what you were alluding to with Taiwan, and even though they do have a massive military and it's a huge part of their country, it is a very free first world democratic country, and they're going to want it. Are they going to be Churchill?
Are they going to regress?
Are they going to be, we're going to fight them on the landing grounds, or we're going to fight them on the beaches, fight them on the hills?
China's convinced that they won't. That China has convinced themselves. I'm not sure they're right, but it seems to me their leadership believes that Taiwanese are soft.
So that could be what these planes flying around all the time are, is two things: fueling the more pro-mainland political movements, because Taiwan has a massive amount of political parties, and some are a little more favorable to reunification.
Yeah, and they're on the decline, but yeah.
So pushing political wins maybe in Taiwan, but then also getting the populace concerned. Some sort of morale hindering of some sort,
or morale boosting at home maybe. So they've got some
that could be much more plausible
to show their people.
What the Taiwanese think could be completely irrelevant. It could be
they're
just
flag waving for
something to put on the People's Free Television program, or whatever their great propaganda outlet is.
Yeah, just to say we could take Taiwan anytime we wanted to.
Yeah, look at the People's Liberation Air Force or whatever it's called.
Yeah,
we flew 4 more jets. Instead of just 43, we threw 47 into their air zone today. The Taiwanese, those idiots, they did nothing.
Right, and that part is real. I don't think the Taiwanese have got enough hardware to really fight that. It's at least as far as the Air Force go, it's about a 10-to-1 differential.
Oh no, yeah, to completely defend, no, but it's just like if the Chinese did do an invasion, they would pay for it.
Yeah, we could impose a whole lot of costs, or Taiwan could by itself. But
then, yeah, the big question.
I'm pretty sure, Taiwan would, because that's where all our chips are made. And we will be given a choice. Do we scuttle those factories? I think that that is an option on the table. I don't know that for sure, but
yeah, for complete selfish interest of the Western allied countries, which would include,
right,
everybody out west is Australia.
The Chinese are about 10 years behind us as far as semiconductors go, and we don't want them to get that prize.
Right, but so with our complete selfish interest, there's the chips, but there's also mainly for the Americans and the Japanese, there's the strategical naval area where Taiwan would break that, where it sort of runs from northern Philippines.
Right. Yeah.
Actually, I can kind of look. It's right on the top right part of your head with your
right
map. Yeah. So there's like from the Philippines and then to Taiwan and then to the South Japanese islands. There's sort of that perimeter around China.
The string of pearls. Yeah.
Yeah. And so if China takes Taiwan, that sort of breaks that.
Then they get a lot more options as far as the Pacific goes.
Mm-hmm.
It would be a huge strategic coup for them.
But as America turns more and more inward, it's like what are the next few years going to look like? And if there's another Trump presidency, who knows? It's like all bets are off. It's like it could be just like a further turn into this hyper protectionism that Trump started off with, or
which both parties are on board with now.
Yeah, which is weird how much that shifted.
Yeah,
you're right. Yeah, like the Democrats have sort of played along with that all of a sudden. But Trump is so capricious, and he's made a lot of the Republicans so capricious. Like that's almost like the political philosophy of Trumpism is just to be inconsistent and contradictory and unpredictable. So So point being is if there's an administration change in that direction, like who knows what American foreign policy will be for the next decade.
I wonder what General Milley really believed. What led General Milley to believe that Trump could conceivably start a war to remain in office? Because he seemed to be genuinely of the belief that was a possibility, to the point where he would call, his Chinese counterpart and say, we're not going to do this. We're not going to attack. And maybe that was blown out. Maybe it was like Chinese spy network where we're getting paranoid, and the U.S. spy network picked up on the fact that the Chinese were getting paranoid about a possible attack out of desperation.
Mm-hmm.
And then General Milley got wind of it and shut that down right away. Or maybe the general had a serious reason to believe that Trump might actually do that. He's such a loose cat. Yeah, you just don't know. I'm a hawk on that sort of thing. I would prefer to bring the bulk of allied forces, Australian subs and Japanese carriers and all of it, and say, okay, enough. If you fly any more sorties over Taiwan, we're going to have to shoot you down. And if you want to start a war over it, okay, we're going to start it right here. But this intimidation's got to stop. You're going to shit or get off the pot, and you're going to, grow up and start acting like a responsible world power and not, a teenager having a tantrum.
And you think there'd be a incentive, perhaps, with Biden to do something like that? It would make him look strong,
right?
It's
but he's afraid that the regime would call his bluff.
Well, but he might not be bluffing, but the regime. But the regime think maybe he's bluffing, and they attempt to call him a possible bluff.
And then it escalates.
And then he might not be bluffing. and it escalates.
And maybe it's just like we're too worried about escalation because we're both nuclear powers, and the mutually assured destruction isn't the same as what it was between us and the Soviet Union.
Well, it's way different between China and the United States than it is between the United States and Russia, because there's parity there, and China's nuclear armaments are minuscule compared to the United States, unlike Russia, where they're equivalent. So,
right,
how much do I actually know about military engagement to talk?
They hit Chicago, I don't know, but they could give us a bloody nose one way or another.
Well, I think it would be more like the size of their nuclear arms are a lot smaller for most of them too. So I think it would be mostly used on military targets, or attempted to use on military targets. But point being is they don't have very many. So if they use them, like they could use them all up, particularly quick. And the United States has just this monstrous arsenal.
Yeah.
And more means to keep producing more if that needs to be the case.
Yeah.
All the same, there's going to be an incentive for Beijing and Washington to not want to willy-nilly engage in a conflict of that variety anytime soon. But it is surprising that the Americans haven't tried to tell China that this Air Force incursions into Taiwanese airspace is gone way too far.
Yeah.
So, how did we get on China and Taiwan?
Because it was we got on inflation, and I was going back to global trade, which I think may be on the decline, and China is a big part of that. And if they run out of markets to sell to, I mean, they're building railroads to Europe, but Europe is Europe's still trying to be an export economy. And their consumer market is going to be getting smaller. I mean, they all have a demographic problem. So I don't know, what extra goods and services the Chinese expect to be selling Europe. The only growing markets are the United States and Mexico and Africa.
Well, isn't Eastern Europe still sort of developing? Well, this is something where I have no idea, and you're going to have to explain it to me then. So, like Eastern Europe, like all the rest of Europe, is unless
I think unless
there's something going on in one country that we don't know of. I'm pretty sure every European country has the population issue,
right?
Especially like countries like Hungary that also don't want to immigrate anybody to try to to try to offset that a little bit. But aren't all the Eastern European countries with, maybe not so much Estonia and Slovenia, still working their way out of the economic crisis that they would have accrued over the course of communism, and still kind of build their way back up? Or is that
COVID kind of set them back a decade, I think?
Well, not even just COVID. Right. Would they still be able to do that with the population issue that all of Europe has?
They may not have a chance. It's like China. Yeah, China's growing old before it can get rich.
Yeah, and so like Eastern Europe still needs to get rich, like the Germans and the French.
And it's not going to happen. It's too late.
It's too late. Yeah, except for like the couple little ones that have done okay.
Yeah. The little exceptions that prove the rule. But I mean, I was just saying, if China gets belligerent, if they start, I'm thinking that the regime may feel insecure, and in doing so, it may do crazy shit. And, shit that we wouldn't expect a rational regime to do, simply because, they're worried more about their home game than the away game. The away game is just for show, but they may do something stupid. And in that case, global trade would probably shut down. And in that case, the supply shocks would be horrible. They'd hit you like a Mack truck, and then they'd be long lasting. And we would, have to spend at least a decade retooling our whole economy, for, manufacturing, the low end as well as the high end. And that, that would be a whole lot less efficient. And so that would mean that stuff is going to cost more. And I don't see, it doesn't seem like we're going to get the track for globalization is just going to continue on, and we're going to just further specialize and make our supply chains longer and longer. I think companies are now, trying to hedge their bets and put some more wiggle room in their just in time, and they're going to build inefficiencies back into the system, which will be able to handle volatility better. But, it's like you're paying an insurance premium to be able to withstand a higher level of volatility in shipping and supply.
Which is good. Companies should have been doing that decades ago.
Right. They should have been incentivized
hedging against these issues. Yeah.
Right. But they had no, because
there's been disincentive.
We got socialism for shareholders. Yeah. They know that, whatever happens, governments around the world, will keep them alive.
Yeah. The Western first world, we socialize our shareholders.
Right. Yeah. Or they get
banker will go hungry.
Right. To the socialist trough. Right. So if that's what people say when they rage against capitalism, I'm right there with you. I don't know what you can replace that with. I don't know, other than, a hybrid system, which is, messy and the game theory is all over the place. But the strictly market, bearing thing where companies are only beholden to their shareholders. Their shareholders are going to be like, you got to do X, Y, Z and maximize profit, or your stock's not going to be worth much, and we're going to sell it and buy another company that does. Or, we're just going to fire, your upper management and replace them with people that'll do what we tell them. And we're going to tell them to maximize profit and maximize short-term profit. over long-term profit, because we can buy and sell. You're incentivized to hold equities for at least a year, but I don't know if people really think even that far ahead. So, I mean, I like the Norwegian model in the sense that the government has a certain amount of say in the corporations because they're partial owners. And in turn, the government is, ostensibly respondent and accountable to its people, because corporations are not responsible. They're not responsible to the country or its customers or its suppliers or its workers. They just have to satisfy shareholders. And as far as like the broken part of capitalism, that's it. And I don't think we necessarily have to throw the whole shebang out the window. I mean, markets are pretty good for most things, but I think it's possible to keep capitalism and still reform the shareholder socialism that we're stuck with. I don't know how. That would require a bunch of smart accountants and lawyers. And I don't know, maybe it's not possible. Maybe that, the game theory is just going to keep us on this death race.
You might not even need to have any sort of statute or any sort of like convoluted statute. You just sort of see that it's a necessity and sort of make more of a noted social political precedent that this sort of action just creates fragility to the benefit of nobody.
And you got an example of that under the old model where, like, I think Exxon shareholders, you had some shareholder activism in there where they're like, okay, you guys are going to have to start cleaning up your act because we got enough clout in ownership to make you. But that seems to be very much the exception rather than the rule.
Yeah, I would say so. It could be the start of something, but it's probably more of an anomalous occurrence.
Yeah, could you just do it with peer pressure? And can you make some sort of sea chain of social expectations like that? Because we're hitting sea changes of social everything. Just about every social norm is on the table. And we got to figure out how to learn how to live in this brave new world. And we were able to centralize so many things that we couldn't before. Information. I think we were talking before about how Wikipedia, is a perfect example of success there. Whereas whereas the media is incentivized to just eat itself and turn to a horrible corruption of itself. But and I'll go on my Bitcoin track for a second here, because Bitcoin allowed finance to be decentralized and the control of money. And the validators on the network are sufficiently spread out and distributed, not evenly, but evenly enough that no one entity could attack the network, and the cost for doing so maybe is so prohibitive as to not be worth it. So we could spread that out. We've got decentralized finance where you can actually collateralize digital assets and get a loan in actual dollars or stable coin equivalents and use that to buy and sell goods. And it's been used as a way of dodging taxes. But I think the technology itself is a miracle sort of game changer, where loans are handled by smart contracts. And the modern smart contracts, some of them are good, some of them may not be so good. Some maybe, will screw up on their own, or will have some sort of exploit someone will find. And some of the protocols like Solana pretend to be very decentralized and unassailable, but it turns out that, just a few entities within the Solana group have control over everything, where they can like turn the chain off.
Mm-hmm.
And screw shit up. But I think eventually, and it'll just take a Lindy effect. It'll just take, a whole lot of test of time and a lot of screw ups and a lot of people losing their shirts before we'll find, robust enough smart contracts, software that is better than code, that just does what it does. And if you could predict what it can do, then you can take advantage of it, and it can be used to leverage prosperity. In theory, just a different way of measuring it that is more distributed and has less gatekeepers in the way, like bankers and regulators. So that's the libertarian utopia.
Fantasy. Yeah.
That right.
You made it sound really
well.
Extra fuzzy and utopian there at the end.
I know I did, because I think they're onto something there. I don't think it's they're like Bitcoin fixes everything. Bitcoin's going to bank the unbanked, and which is bullshit, because if you're unbanked, you don't want to be holding your entire wealth in like a bare asset in a wallet that, if you screw it up, or you send it to the wrong address, it disappears. It's gone forever.
I'm very happy somebody's helping me look after my account.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
well, and here in Saskatchewan too, like we have a lot of, like, what I like particularly about who I bank with. I don't bank with a bank. The Saskatchewan has been very prominent in the cooperative movement going back a century. And so, like,
there's like a state bank.
No, it's a cooperative. It's a credit union.
Okay.
So even with my account, it's not looked after by some evil, scary, monolithic company. It's this
some working stiff civil servant.
No, it's not a government thing. Credit unions, they're private, but it's like you get dividends, and it's owned by the members. It's not owned by anybody. It's owned by whoever pays into it. And so things like that are very opposite to the libertarian fantasy world, and I very like it's like the alternative I'm in.
Or they call I think the libertarian fantasy is onto something, in the sense that not all gatekeepers are good, not all our institutions are good, and some of them do indeed need to die. And you can find some new efficiencies, and or at least eliminate, if not eliminate corruption, make it transparent. Where you can just trace where the Bitcoin goes on the chain. Everybody can see it, and you, as opposed to Swiss banks.
Mm-hmm.
But they believe Bitcoin fixes everything. That Bitcoin is gonna bring power to the people, and I was like, I don't see that. I see all the big banks saying, oh, there's money in them there hills, and they're, sticking their dick in the pudding because the pudding's good, and they know where their pudding is buttered. To mix my metaphors.
Very excellently.
But yeah, I mean, the banks are just going to financialize the fuck out of it and rehypothecate, and they will leverage that and make it explode like they do anything else. And eventually, you're going to need to rely on some sort of institution to custody even a digital asset on a a public ledger, you're going to want your bank to be handling your private keys. So you can't, so you have someone to call when you lose your password. So, it's new boss, same as the old boss in a lot of ways.
Sort of like, I think I sent you, so I sent you a video from whatever year the libertarian leadership race, with Larry Elder running it, and they're getting mad. They're getting mad about driver's licenses.
Oh yeah.
Like so, it's just like self-made comedy with no self-awareness.
Or the poor guy who's like on the national scene is the radical, is the libertarian radical, but among his people, he's like, oh my God, you guys are crazy.
Yeah, with Gary.
Johnston.
Yeah. So like on the national scene, it's like he was like the ultra libertarian crazy, and then he was pretty much like a communist shill.
Yeah.
amongst what's next? We're gonna have to get a license to put toast in our toast.
Yes. Right.
You people are not. Anyway, point was, I sent that to you, and then you sort of went on a little thing where it's like, they live in this libertarian fantasy world, and it's like, oh, so we don't need the government.
They come up with brand new solutions to their problems, which end up being
like a government. Oh, you mean like a government? No, you gross. Yeah. So they clear off everything, but then they just need to bring it all back in anyway, because it's sort of like a sort of with more like the left anarchical thinkers was sort of satirized in this South Park episode, where these kids go to college for their first year of their undergraduate courses, and they come back to South Park, and then they're talking to like the main cast kids, Stan and Kyle and them, and it's saying like, oh, we don't need to live in this world, man. We just need like somebody to look after everybody. Oh, you mean like a cop? And we need like somebody to like just make the food and do all this. And then Kyle or Stan or whoever said, oh, you need like a town,
right?
yeah.
He just does the slow blink thing.
Yeah. So so that seems to be a common thing. People are have that consternation towards the existing institutions, and then just want to get rid of them altogether. But you need something.
And and most of them, probably just envision themselves, replacing them with their systems that were there at the top.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not too sure necessarily everyone, but at the same time, it's good that we're not all beholden to the Catholic Church in Rome anymore. We had a whole lot of wars over Protestantism and Catholicism and counter reformations, and it was a bloody instance. I don't know, maybe the Catholic Church was better if we were just if we just stuck with the Catholic Church, we could have just avoided all those wars, and what the Pope says goes, and we just accept that, and we do our thing.
No, rest assured, they were still warring with the Pope. The Pope's authority only went so far, and he could sanction quite easily the smaller squabbles, which also ended in quite a large amount of brutal outcomes. And
Right. But I mean, Martin Luther wasn't wrong when he was like pointing out the corruption in the regimes, in the institutions of the day, which probably at one point had a positive function, but became corrupted over time. And Martin Luther, kind of broke that all open and said, look, these guys are, totally corrupt. And, people, even if they didn't see everything that Martin Luther saw, they felt that there was some truth in that. And the alternative was, well, we can read our own Bible, and we can, figure out how we're supposed to worship God, or leave it to our kings to figure out. And of course, our kings love that idea, as opposed to splitting that up between them and the Pope.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like a much better deal if you can be head of your own church, and you can say what the Bible says. World War II probably couldn't have happened without mass media of movies and radio. And so, yeah, this technological revolution may kill us all, because we're so powerful, that a very small amount of us, small number of humans, could just totally screw it up for the rest of us.
Very well done, Scott. You after all our 10,000 side notes, and you brought it back to media.
Right. Yeah.
which is where we started.
And it's crazy, because there's so many wonderful things about this media, and there was some truth to it when they said 70 years ago, television is going to revolutionize education, and even the poorest person will be able to educate themselves because of mass television, which turned out to not quite be that. Yes, it's possible, and in some ways it works, but most of that just became bubblegum shit.
Yeah, TV was definitely a net loss, for sure.
Was it?
Well, now I'm not so sure now, because I think because the idea is that TV made a lot more people reading less, but then you think back prior to that, like one thing that TV killed was like really bad books. There was a lot less, from the 70s until now. There's a lot less 90-page westerns and just all sorts of throwaway pulp. Especially if you go to you look in new literature in a bookstore today, about a quarter of it is pretty good. There's still a lot of middle brow genre fiction, stuff that's pretty crappy. But I would suspect that a lot of people that stopped reading or didn't really get into reading, or or educating themselves, and just watch Dallas and Golden Girls and whatever, might have just done the literary equivalent anyway.
Right.
So
yeah. So I don't know how you can prove whether it's
so I sort of had to bring in compared in contrast to my typical pessimism, I had to sort of bring in the Pinkerian optimism of things weren't as great as you think.
Pinkerian. Yeah. I haven't heard that actually. You mean Steven Pinker, right?
Yeah, I just made that up.
But Pinkerian. Oh no, that's great. Yeah,
he has his own way of looking at things. So yeah,
sounds like the next villains in Star Trek.
The Pinkerian.
Everything is wonderful. What's wrong with you people? You should be happy.
Captain, I've locked on the Pinkerians. Don't fire, Mr. Worf. Yeah, so overall.
So is there some redemption to the internet? Is there redemption to Twitter and Facebook? Can you just take the argument, oh well, these are just tools, you can use them for good and you can use them for bad, and tie that up with human nature and say we're going to be okay? I don't know. At some point, human nature's got to change. I mean, I watched Alex Friedman earlier today. This guy who watches, who does research on primates, right? And tries to learn stuff about humans by studying primates and finds some disturbing stuff like, primates, especially chimpanzees, will premeditate and kill and will, isolate people and, do like a gang style jump where they, 8-to-1 gang up on a chimp from another tribe and literally tear them apart.
Or a defector.
Or a defector, exactly.
Yeah.
And, we can see that in our behavior. But at the same time, if you like compare pound for pound the amount of aggression, the chimps are super aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
By implication, humans have learned to moderate that aggressive urge to the degree that we were able to evolve higher functions, that non-alpha males could invent music and poetry and be able to pass on their genes. We found a way out of that paradigm evolutionarily and evolved into something better, I think. And I think we got to figure out how to do that again. And Western individualism is awesome. And, I love being able to be free to be a weirdo and a contrarian and to dance to my own beat. But at the same time, ever more so, no man is an island, because it takes fewer and fewer of us to really screw shit up. And, this pandemic has shown us that we were pathologically individualistic. And, maybe you could do an anthropological study.
I think it's, I'm ever pedantic, but I think it's too much of a stretch or lacking in some clarity to say we were too, what did you say?
Violent?
No.
Hyper aggressive? Maybe?
What did you say? Too excessively individualistic?
Okay. Yeah.
I don't think that would be totally correct. That because there was a lot of people that were willing to look for some sort of collective action, but there was just too much of that excessive individualism went somewhat awry to everybody, including their own detriment. And what to do about that, because you can't do away with that. And in other areas it has so much benefit, but in this particular instance,
in a world of super spreader events, it just takes a couple of defectors and
the game goes down the shitter. Yeah. And we've seen that happen a lot with immense consequence. So what do you do about that?
Manipulate people with mass media. Right?
That didn't work out so well either.
Well, now we've got the power of AI and machine learning. Yeah. And the machines can probably get better at manipulating us than we are, because they can do it. They can learn quicker. They can modify their campaigns quicker and do it on such subtle levels and such individual levels. You don't have to make something that appeals to everybody. You just have to make something that pushes, Josh Farden's buttons specifically. It figures out what Josh's
that's a lot of things.
And it pushes them and now you're a zombie. Now you're, now you're manipulatable, and it's not even humans doing it. It's the AI, because it's good at it, because it can, it can tell by your search history whether or not you're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
It can tell, what kind of products you'd be interested in. It can, emotionally motivate you for products and to say that you're not susceptible to this is is dangerous because we all are. I think we have to admit that each of us are. I'm immune to some sort of
the Dalai Lama to not be.
Right. Yeah. So we should just turn everything over the Dalai Lama, or pardon me, His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and
there's our answer: Buddhism. Well, everybody will be so mindful and have such self-control.
That doesn't sound so bad.
Although Buddhism didn't turn out to scale, like the pre-19th century or pre-20th century Japanese were Buddhists were pretty fucking brutal. So it just on a large level, or even today, as there's a lot of Buddhists in Myanmar that are not doing the best things ever. Trying to get everybody mindful and self-aware and calm may be a completely futile endeavor,
or maybe essential. Maybe we have to, otherwise we're fucked. It's becoming an existential issue here, because the game theory doesn't support us figuring out how to survive a bad pandemic. This one was a warning shot. There could be one that's much worse, that kills quicker, that spreads quicker, etc. And and climate change is the same deal. The game theory doesn't support everybody getting on the bandwagon. It's better to ride on other people's shoulders and profit off defecting while everybody else saves the world. But we can't go back. We're making irreparable damage. So eventually, human nature. I don't see any other choice. We've got to figure out how to change.
It seems like we can.
And evolution ain't going to do it. It's too slow.
It's sort of like we're playing Russian roulette with a pistol with a lot of slots in the cylinder.
Right.
Like hundreds. And
right.
There's only one bullet in there somewhere, and we just keep spinning it and keep pulling the trigger.
We have no idea where it is. Yeah.
Well, not just that. It's more so we keep saying, "Oh, well, I haven't."
We haven't blown our brains out. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I haven't got us killed once.
What are you worried about? It sort of ties back to the very widespread lack of concern, and we mentioned the possibility of a standoff. Like, it hasn't really reached that point, but the possibility of a standoff, moving from the Russians to the Americans to the Chinese, and then there's also the real nuclear standoff between the Pakistanis and the Indians. It's like, this is a major issue that just nobody cares about or thinks about anymore. It's like, well, there hasn't been a nuclear war yet, so why worry?
We made it this far, yeah.
Yeah. So it's that mindset that holds a lot of people back, and what to shift that, I have no idea. But
the only other option is total disarmament. And I was like, if you could change human behavior to the point of total disarmament, you could just change human behavior and not have to completely disarm.
Mm-hmm.
But you probably should anyway, because shit can go wrong, and nuclear weapons are pretty awful. I mean, I guess you could keep your nukes under the assumption that a single mistake, at worst could destroy a city, but not the planet, not humanity.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the jury's still out, like, how much it would take to actually destroy humanity. Like, there's not much of a consensus on nuclear winter hypothesis. There's people on both sides, but then again, too, it's like, I don't want to find out.
Right.
It's the same with climate change. It's like, you take the most left-wing political activists, and they say they'll tell you, exactly what day, things will be to what degree bad. It's just like they know everything. It's like, it's not really that certain what will happen, but I don't want to find out.
Yeah, could be worse. There could be
could be worse.
There's
Could
tons
be,
of right,
yeah.
tons of factors that we can't possibly plan for.
AOC could be super conservative, like
yeah,
like Naomi Klein could be way off, could be way worse. But it's just you don't need that type of forecasting. It's just you just want to resolve the issue before you find out to what extent the calamity is. Same with the nuclear weapons.
So, can you tell me, what do you think? Do we need institutions? Can we survive without them? Should we try to?
We need we need institutions. We just need to figure out how we can make them better. And you mentioned like Martin Luther, and I think like for Europe for most of the last, or for not most, the last millennium, like that was a big component of all the institutions, and waned a lot more as that millennium came to its conclusion. But steady reform happened. There wasn't a lot of just wholesale destruction of the institutions and then trying to build something new. And lots of times when the reform would happen, things would not for the better. So it's just
we were lucky, I think.
So yeah, if this makes me sort of conservative, we need institutions. We can't just burn the mother down.
A hierarchy.
Yeah.
Okay, you can do it better than I can.
Yeah. But we need something of that sort. We need the institutions. It's just what are the problems with them, and what do we need to change with them. Anyway, but I think if we haven't completely angered our audience already, hopefully we haven't. I think like let's call it a day.
Like, sorry, Catholics. I mean, this is totally I'm sorry to beat up on Catholics. I will beat up on Catholics just because there's so many of them, because they can take it. Right. Okay, yeah, keep digging, Scott.
There's enough Catholics to take the shock, but yeah, let's call it a day for now. And I think next time let's pick back up with our discussion of the institutions. Let's bring it. If we haven't completely annoyed our audience with our attention deficit tendencies already, let's come back on our idea of what went all wrong with the one institution of the media during this lovely fun pandemic time, and what they could have done differently, and how with the press things just went so shitty. And we sort of unexpectedly went off onto a bunch of side tangents about the markets. So maybe let's come back to inflation again next time, and get your thoughts on where that's going to possibly go over the next few months. Because I was kind of hoping, like I was a little more pessimistic about the lumber market, and like that came quicker, a lot.
It was
quicker
like
than
Eiffel Tower, just
right. So it sort of made me hopeful. It's like, maybe like a lot of things are going to start correcting already, but now a lot of things are going awry. We didn't even mention oil, like what? Like, Jesus Christ, like that just went off with a bang really fast. Like
we're just in choppy waters. And
So is it just that? Is it just
the next wave's going to come from?
Yeah, just wacky volatility, or
and you can't even steer your boat into the wave because you don't know where it's going to come from. You're going to get hit on the side and you're going to get rocked.
And that seems to be what's happening. But so let's come back to that.
All right.
And our lovely friends in the media, and and that level of institutional failure. So there we go.
Oh, that'll be fun. Yeah. Well, we'll beat up on the media, and everybody's going to love that. There ain't nobody that's going to be mad at us for beating up on them. Even Anderson Cooper will be like, "Way to go!"
I hate my job.
Right.
Everybody unifies in shitting on the media. So yeah, that was our first experiment in this little conversation, and it will carry on to next time. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. There'll be more episodes coming for you in the future. Be sure to check out endcoronavirus.org and worldhealthnetwork.global for more information on the organization. Thanks to Michelle from Make Good Together for doing the graphics for the show, and a huge thanks to Tracy, the noble producer of the show. If you listen to the show on either YouTube or podcast format, well, they are available on both, and be sure to like and subscribe and comment on those. All the best. Till next time.